I'm going to record to the computer instead. All right. So we're here tonight, and thank you all for joining. Much appreciated. We're here to talk about the kings of the turf, and in this case here, a gentleman named Hiram Woodruff and a horse named Dexter, and we're going to find out just a little bit about them. But first, coming up, we have a really exciting meeting coming up at Nears later this month. When we did the presentation on the Union Course race, we did a we did a horse race at the end. We took a real horse race off of YouTube, and we gave all the horses like fun names, and people were cheering for a horse, and it was exciting. So we're going to do that. We give the horses names like Lewis of Woodhaven and Forest Parkway and Nears Tavern, and so it gives people kind of root for it. It's fun. And so we're going to have 6 races. It's a night at the races, Monday, August 21st, 7 p.m. We're going to have six races on video. There's no gambling. You're not betting any money. You're just people who pick who the winning horse is going to be. If they have the winning horse, they're going to win. They're going to win a prize. So it'll be a fun night of horse racing, and we'll also be throwing out a little bits of trivia about Woodhaven's really rich and interesting history with horse racing. And that night we're going to have a special guest. This was someone that Mr. Carl Mulanus over at the Friends of Maple Grove Cemetery introduced to us, a gentleman named Rocky Hannon. He's in his 80s. He was a jockey for many years, and he's very entertaining. He tells a good story, and he's going to come and he's going to talk to us, and he's going to talk about his life and racing and racetracks. He met Mae West. He met John Gotti. So he's got some fun stories to tell, and we're really looking forward to that night. So we'll have him talk for a while. We'll have some horse races, and we'll have a good time. So that's Monday, August 21st, 7 p.m. at Nears Tavern. So let's jump into this, and let's start by, just kind of revisiting the era and what Woodhaven, what Woodhaven looked like. So we're looking at a map of Woodhaven from the 1830s, and splashed right across the center there, you'll see where it says East New York. This was John Pitkin's plan for a new city, which was going to stretch from Brooklyn to Jamaica, and the entire thing was going to be called East New York because it was east of New York City. He felt he wanted to build a city that was better than Manhattan, and it was going to lay it out in a special way. It turned out that Woodhaven, a big part of it, Woodhaven and Ozone Park, was kind of like the industrial part of this proposed new city. Looking at this map where it says East New York, you can start feeling your way around by looking at certain things. Up here is the woods. That's Forest Park up there. That's Forest Park, and right over here where it says Connecticut Avenue, that's Woodhaven Boulevard.
Yeah,
that's Woodhaven Boulevard running through there.
there's the track.
There's Jamaica Turnpike, Jamaica Avenue. And right there's Atlantic Avenue. It's funny how, here it is, 200 years later, the roads are the same. The roads are the same. And right there, you can see the big oval, and that is the Union Course racetrack, which we've talked about, quite a bit. And just taking a look at this map of the Union Course racetrack, I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful map. A beautiful map, courtesy of the Queens Historical Society. Alan Smith was a Woodhaven historian. He had it in a big sheet of plastic, and he came and we put it on a table, and There was no way we could take a picture of it where it would have any detail, and there was no scanner that was big enough. So we had to scan it. We got to put a wand, and we scanned it in sections, and it came out pretty good. But it gives you a really excellent look at not just the grounds of the Union Course racetrack, but the actual shape of the track, and also down below some of the areas, some of the streets. It's a very interesting thing. It shows you, you know, where the entrance was. Again, this map is from 1836. So this is a nice map right here. And where the Union Course racetrack was a dirt track, and one lap was 1 mile and 30 feet. And in the early days of horse racing, they would have four laps for each heat. So sometimes you could have, you know, 3 heats, meaning that a horse might do 12 laps, 12 miles in one afternoon of heavy racing. You know, what you'll find about racing in those days is horses didn't run every week. It was sometimes a horse might only have 1 or 2 races a year. And over the years, they had different kinds, which in our eyes today would be considered somewhat cruel. You know, they used to have regular horse races like these heats. They used to have races against time. So they would challenge a horse to run 100 laps in 10 hours. You know, things like that. And then later on, another race which became very popular and kept the Union Course track alive in its later days were the trotters, where they're pulling carts as they run. So naturally, when you have a big racetrack that attracts a lot of people and a lot of money and a lot of visitors, what do you see happen around the racetrack? Business crops up. So you've got businesses along Jamaica Avenue. You've got different hotels, blacksmiths, stables, all, you know, all of it related to the horsing business, and all up Snedeker Avenue there. You know, you would see hotels and restaurants, and it's right over here, right around this first green square right here, where Nearest Tavern sat. So you had all of these businesses cropping up around the outside of the racetrack. So as this is part 1 of Dexter Park, a history of, let's get into where was Dexter Park, and let's look at it in kind of a today map so that we understand it. Right up there you see Park Lane South, down here Jamaica Avenue, over here Forest Parkway, and right over there Franklin K. Lane High School. Right up there you've got Cypress Hills Cemetery. Down here you can see where Nearest Tavern is, and where the racetrack was. So now you kind of have an idea where in the neighborhood you're looking at, and right over this area right here was the land that was known as Dexter Park. It was a somewhat narrow piece of land for the time, for places that had big wide open fields and such, but they managed to do a lot with it. So part 1 of this, I call this the most famous Woodhaven resident ever. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but he's he should be a lot more famous in this town than he is. And at the end of this presentation, I'll ask that question of everybody, and ask you if you think he should be better remembered here in Woodhaven. And there he is right there, our mystery man, and his name is Hiram Woodruff. and we're gonna talk about his life here, give you some highlights. And he was born in 1817, and he was born in New Jersey. His father was a horseman, and he grew up from the time he was a baby. he grew up around horses. He was born in 1817, and in 1823, at the age of 6, he made the trek to Woodhaven. It wasn't called Woodhaven at the time; it was called Union Course, to the Union Course racetrack to see the famous race that took place 200 years ago, in which American Eclipse beat Sir Henry 2 out of 3 heats. One of the most famous sporting events of all time, and arguably the first great sporting event in the history of the United States, the Union Course racetrack. So he traveled here and witnessed one of the highlights of probably the highlight of Woodhaven's history at 6 years old. By the time he was 14, he was racing horses. His first horse had the name Shaking Quaker, and he rode that horse to a number of victories. In his life, he rode almost all of the great horses of the time. He was very much in demand as a jockey. For 33 years, he was a rider, and he was also a famed horse trainer. After his career as a rider ended, he continued training horses, and he had a terrific record and was very, very well regarded in that. Like I said, if there was a famous horse in that era, he rode it, or they brought the horse to him for a little while for some extra training. He wrote a book about horses and trotting. And when I say this book is still revered today, I mean it is. It's still considered basically the Bible of training horses to be trotters. That was his specialty, trotters. And this book is still in print to this day. You can purchase it. And he operated stables on Jamaica Avenue. He saw an opportunity. He saw the Union Course racetrack. As a young man, he bought the land that became Dexter Park, and he built stables on there. And it's a little murky how the hotel and the other things got built there, but eventually they did. There was a roadhouse there, like a bar restaurant that he ran, and there was a hotel, and there was a big ballroom there, and it became the center of a lot of social events. When a big race would be in town, they would all go over to Hiram Woodruff's, and it was extremely well known. So here is a painting by Currier and Ives, and Currier and Ives did a lot of paintings of horses and racing, because racing was a big part of American life. There was a lot of entertainment value in it, and also a lot of money. And this is a Currier and Ives painting that is called "Coming from the Trot," and it gives you a kind of a look at what Hiram Woodruff's place looked like. You can see the stable over there, and it's got his name on it. And then over on the right, you've got the roadhouse and the hotel, and in the middle, you've got some horses. There's a lot of comical activity in this one, with people falling off horses and such. But this is coming from the trot. You can see there's Hiram Woodruff's name. Some poor soul fell out of his cart. You've got all the men kind of standing around, and I'm sure they're making bets or talking about horse racing. And then Currier and Ives paintings at the racetrack, when they have hotels, they always have these little upper windows where people are looking out of them, usually ladies. looking out to see what's going on. Now this was an article in 1906, and this was 40 years after Hiram Woodruff had passed away, and they were still writing about him. And this is an article about his old place, and you can see another like painting there or drawing of Hiram Woodruff's place. That there were a lot of articles, during the research that went into this. It led me to a number of different articles, which start talking about a really interesting period of time in Woodhaven's history. And I've got a lot of this stuff aside for a whole nother session, but it's this era right here of 1906, and the next like 15-20 years as Woodhaven starts to modernize, if you will. By this time, 1906, the racetrack's been gone for over 35 years, and the land that the racetrack was on has now been by this time parceled up and buildings put on them. And Hiram Woodruff's old stables and hotel and everything was still there, but for how long they didn't know. So there were it prompted a lot of news articles about what Woodhaven was like at that moment, with these very, very old places still standing. And it's a treasure trove of information, these newspaper articles written at the time, talking to people who were there in person, during this time. This is just kind of just one of the articles that were there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will make these available at some point. It would be nice to get these transcribed. But it talks about how just details that upstairs is a large ballroom. It takes up one side of the house. There's a large reception room, parlor room. Mrs. Woodruff presided over the preparation and serving of the dinners, which were a feature of the Roadhouse. So it's a lot of very good personal information in here. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of interesting names. There's a lot of great material here. And I've got lots of articles put aside, flagged aside, that I still have to go through and read. This is a close-up of that picture of the Woodruff stables. And in the one article, it talks about the men here, and this man up here is supposed to be Hiram Woodruff here. This is an actual photograph taken in 1906 of Hiram Woodruff home. It's not great quality, but it's an interesting picture of something that has been gone for many years. And these were other buildings that were right next to Dexter Park and right next to Hiram Woodruff's place, and a very famous place in Woodhaven's history, that was famous at this time still, was Mr. Murphy's blacksmith over there at the right. This is from an article in 1921, and by this time, the Union Course racetrack, in 1921, by this time, it had been gone for almost 50 years. So of course, to them, when they think about it, in 1921, it's the old Union Course. It made turf history. Next Saturday, centennial anniversary of opening of most famous American track. So, this is an article on the 100th anniversary of the opening of the Union Course racetrack. Hiram Woodruff's Roadhouse and John Murphy's blacksmith shop remain to mark site. So, at this point in 1921, what they're saying is basically the last things remaining of Woodhaven's connection to horse racing were Hiram Woodruff's Roadhouse and this blacksmith shop over here. Here's a picture. It's of this building. It's on the left. You can see over there. This is it. This is a 1940s tax photo. This is something new. I know we've looked at the 1940s tax photos before, but now if you look at them, if you look at the 1940s picture, there's a button on it that says colorize, and when you click on it, it'll colorize the photo for you, and it does a pretty decent job. I give it a lot of credit. It does a pretty decent job, and the trick is it'll allow you to do 2 a day for free. If you want to do more, then you got to pay. But we're gonna have a whole presentation on looking at 1940s Woodhaven in color, because some of these pictures, they really pop out at you in color. They look nice. There's the again 1940 tax photo colorized of the Dexter Park, you know, the bar and restaurant and the hotel there. That was all Hiram Woodruff's. You know, that was left behind from that era. You know, and modernized and expanded upon, but you know, that's what it was. It was the old roadhouse there. So you know, we had a really interesting part of Woodhaven history that lasted right into the 1950s. And you know, looking back now, it's a shame that this part of it, some of it wasn't at least preserved in some way, especially since the horse racing history we had here was pretty significant. So here's Mr. Woodruff here, a nice drawing, and this actually comes from the book that he wrote that I was talking about before, and there's his signature there. Again, he was a tremendous rider, and he had a lot of success. In this little article here, was talking about a great trotting match, and it was this horse here, Dutchman. Dutchman was a trotting horse that Hiram Woodruff trained, and that had set some records and was very famous for its time. Again, he rode all the famous horses, and so famous was Dutchman, and Hiram Woodruff. Again, you know, you get another Currier and Ives drawing of them. There are a number of drawings of Hiram Woodruff in Currier and Ives. He was, you know, he was quite a popular subject. But though he worked with a lot of horses, Hiram Woodruff had one great success as a rider and a trainer, and it was this horse that was brought to him that had shown some great promise, but was a little wild. And as a matter of fact, they it was Dexter. The horse was so wild that they gelded him, so they thought that would tame him, and that kind of took away a lot of some of the value of the horse, because you know, if you have a champion, you want, after his career is over, to be able to mate him, and you can sell, you can keep making a lot of money off of a champion horse. And this horse, Woodruff was able to take and train, and this horse became one of the greatest champions of its era, and that horse was named Dexter, and Dexter held the title, the King of the Turf. That was Dexter's title, but Woodruff was sometimes called the same thing, and their success for a while there went hand in hand. Both were equally famous, and they played a big part in horse racing history. So let's take a look at Dexter for a few moments. He was uh, 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 born 1858, and there was a famous horse, Hamiltonian, and he came from that line. That was his father. And Dexter was well known for having a white splash on the nose, and all four hooves had the white. You'll see Dexter. That's usually displayed in all the drawings. Uh, there we go. Ran unbroken until 1862. He was sold for $400 to George B. Alley, and he's the one who brought him over to eventually over to Woodruff. He was wild and gelded, and then it was 1863. They brought him to Woodruff to see if he could do anything with him. He bought him, and he was. It says here, you can see Dexter's turf debut in 1864 was so successful that he was soon a household word throughout the country. It's funny how fame was different in those days, and a horse could become extremely famous, and everyone would know a lot about that horse. And you'll see Dexter was a great example of that. Later on, someone paid 14,000 for him, and then he set another record. Up until the time Dexter came along, the record for a mile for a horse in the trotter sat around 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And Woodruff, with some of the other great horses that he ran with, had been slowly knocking it down a little bit at a time. But it was still in the 230s when Dexter set a record. Originally, the first record he set was 2 minutes and 18 and a quarter seconds, and that was like a shock around the world, because that just shattered the record before that, and it was a famous thing. Here he broke it even further, 2 minutes and 17 and a quarter seconds. Eventually was purchased for $35,000 by a publisher named Robert Bonner. We'll hear more about him later, but he didn't want to race Dexter. He bought Dexter and retired him right away, and it just became his personal. He was a rich man, became his personal horse, and it was the one that when he went out just for a little ride around town, that was his horse. And Dexter ended up playing a part in the 1868 presidential campaign. So we'll see a lot of this right here. In his career, he won 46 of 50 races, and that was his best at 2 minutes 17 and a quarter. That was his best time. Here's a painting of Dexter that went out, a commemorative thing. You could see, if you look on the left-hand side on the ground, there's a bush and there's a rock there, and it says 218. I think that's 218 and a quarter. That basically gives his time in the race. That he had broken the record. There's a lot of paintings of Dexter, and you notice again, you see the splash of white on his nose and on his hooves. So now we're gonna talk about Hiram Woodruff now, and his death. He died a young man. He was but 50 years old, and he died in 1867. Really, at the you would have to say at the height of his fame, and it caught everybody by surprise, because, like I said, he was young, and it was kind of a quick demise, and that happened a lot in those days. Happens a lot these days too, but I mean, it really happened a lot in those days. It was sometimes people just got sick and passed. It happened at his own residence. right here in Woodhaven. He lived here for many, many years. He was really tied to this area, and died right there on Jamaica Avenue in on the land that he owned. And in his obituaries, and this is the thing I think really kind of drew me to Hiram Woodruff, is that um, when I was reading those obituaries, they all said such kind things about him. And here it says, strictly honorable in all his dealings, incorruptibly honest in every relation of life, he possessed the esteem and respect of everyone, and his name became synonymous with honesty and truthfulness. I mean, that is very, very high praise. And in this article here, it talks about 2 years before his death. And this is one area I really haven't been able to quite figure out. But he owned the land, and but it doesn't sound like he actually owned the buildings that were on them. And it says here, about 2 years ago, the turfmen of this country, desirous of manifesting their deep respect and esteem for his unblemished character and incorruptible integrity, purchased the hotel and homestead in which he had resided for many years, and presented it to him as a substantial token of the estimation in which he was held. So in other words, his fellow turfmen, they all got together. He owned the land, but it doesn't sound like he owned the buildings that were there, the buildings that he ran, and they bought them and gave it to him. And that is a tremendous gesture. That between that and the words here about him, it tells you he was really someone that was really beloved. This story here, Woodruff's funeral on March 17th, 1867, presented a remarkable scene. There had been a great snowstorm, and drifts of snow lay in the roads. In spite of the weather, horsemen from all over the country attended the funeral. The roads in Cypress Hills Cemetery, where Woodruff was buried, were impassable for wheeled vehicles, and the body of the horseman was conveyed in a sleigh to the grave. Well, once I started reading this description, and there's another article which describes it, and it talked about how they had to get his coffin up a hill to his grave. I wanted to visit that spot. It took a little while, but we did find his grave in Cypress Hill Cemetery, and this is the road that leads up to it. So you can imagine on a snowy day, it's actually a lot steeper than it looks here, because it starts from Jamaica Avenue, just keeps on going up all the way. It's about halfway up, and you can see they would have to go up there, and then where his grave is up the hill that way, even higher. So they had quite a job on a very snowy day, getting him to his grave. Here's the monument. Here's his gravestone, and it's a beautiful spot of Cypress Hills Cemetery. Cypress Hills Cemetery has some really spectacular views, and is nice just to go there and kind of walk around a bit. It's really a nice place to visit. To the memory of Hiram Washington Woodruff, it gives his date and down there, and this monument down at the bottom. This monument was erected by his friends. It's a recurring theme with him. The people who spoke well of him, his friends, the things that they did for him, buying him property. But this monument was erected by his friends. He may have fallen on some hard times or something. I don't know. It doesn't mention that in any article, but that his friends were very kind to him, and he was incredibly well respected. And this tombstone, it's very, very difficult to read. I'd like to go there and do one of those tombstone etchings. I don't know what the rules are, so I got to talk with them and see if they would let us. I'm sure they would. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like taking like tracing paper and holding it against it, and you rub it with like a special pencil, like charcoal, and it makes it much easier to read lettering that's on a tombstone that might be very hard to read otherwise. Luckily, they tell us what's on some of the grave. The inscription says, engaged for a period of 40 years in riding, training, and driving the trotting horse of America. He was alike conspicuous for his genius, his unswerving integrity, and his kindness of heart. Cypress Hills Cemetery, you can imagine, is quite large, and it can be tricky finding your way around, but they've got some really good maps. This right here, you can get this on their website. But if you ever visit Cypress Hills Cemetery, in the office, they have these maps here, and this is a map of kind of like all the notable people who are buried in Cypress Hills Cemetery, and it'll show you on the map where they are. And you can see there's about 60 different names on here from all different walks of life, different eras of time, and on that map you can find Mr. Hiram Woodruff, and we went there on a weekday on my lunch hour because I'm only a few minutes away, and I figured I could find him pretty quickly because I had this map. I got turned around a little bit and I was looking in the wrong spot for about 20 minutes, but we did eventually find him. We also visited Jackie Robinson, who's nearby, and John Pitkin, and some of the elders. And we took some good photos, which we'll be able to use in other meetings like this. It's the first time I had visited Mr. Pitkin's tombstone, and I'd never been to Jackie Robinson's, and it was a nice, again, it was a nice quiet afternoon, a nice way to pay respect, and I want to go back and visit a lot more names on this list here, but very happy to see Hiram Woodruff on there. And also one of our members, Alan Smith. Some of you may know Alan. Alan is a great guy. He wrote a book on Cypress Hills Cemetery. He co-wrote a book with a gentleman there, Stephen Doerr, and that's a really good book. If you're ever interested in learning more about Cypress Hills Cemetery, that book you can get on Amazon. So again, there's Hiram Woodruff's tombstone, and he was elected and is in the Harness Racing Museum and Hall of Fame. This is up in Goshen, New York. This is for the trotters. We were actually up there a few months ago for unrelated reasons. We were bringing a friend someplace, and she had to go to a wake. So we dropped her off. We had a few hours to kill, and we went. As we were driving, we saw a place that said the Goshen Historical Society. It was in the town library. So we went and visited in there, and the lady in there said, "While you're here, you might want to go visit the Harness Racing Museum and Hall of Fame." She goes, "It's just down the road, 5 minutes." So we were like, "Okay, that sounds like fun." And who knew it was going to set off a whole flurry of things. But yeah, Hiram Woodruff was elected to that Hall of Fame in 1958, nearly 100 years after he had passed away. 1958 I see as the induction for a lot of things. So I think that's when the Hall of Fame started. There's a picture of the outside. A very nice place to visit. Very entertaining inside. This room was interesting. They had a tour, a couple of people, museum guides and docents, and we were in this room, and looking up at the wall, I had spotted these two Currier and Ives paintings. One is going to the trot, and one is coming from the trot, and those are two paintings, of scenes on Jamaica Avenue in Woodhaven. One of them, the going to the trot, shows John Snedeker's hotel. Snedeker Avenue, 78th Street, where Near's Tavern is named after John Snedeker. And then the other one, Hiram Woodruff's. And when the docent came over and said, "Do you have any questions about the painting?" I was telling her, no, those that one up there and that one up there, those are Woodhaven Queens. I was telling her all about it. She enjoyed it. She got a kick out of it. And there's those two different paintings. Again, these two buildings were side by side right on Jamaica Avenue. There's the going to the trot. And then the one we were looking at before, coming from the trot. This is an announcement here, 1868. This is just a year after Hiram Woodruff passed away, and it's about his book that's coming out, the Trotting Horse of America, how to train and drive him with reminiscences of the trotting turf. If you go on Amazon, you can get it. You can get it in hardcover. You can get it in soft cover. You can get it, what do they call it? The Kindle. Here it is, 155 years after it first came out. This book is still in print, which is pretty impressive, and it's still considered like the Bible of trotting horses. This is a copy that when I was doing the research, went just out of curiosity, went on eBay to see if I could get a copy of the book, and this was up for bid, and this was a first edition, 1868. This was published, this edition, and so that was just it says first edition. I don't know what they mean by that, but it was 1868. The book came out that year, so I think it's an original. It's beautiful. The cover actually looks much better than that right there. That's the picture from eBay. It looks very nice. Inside there are a few drawings. There is I'd say about a third of the book is him talking about how to train a horse, but then the rest of it is just chapter by chapter all the horse races he was involved in and his recollections of them and talking about it. And a lot of them are at Union Course. I'm going to get the book on Kindle and read it. The only reason why is this book is old, and I don't really want to open it too often. It is in good shape, but it is still 155 years old. So I want to keep it protected. It's beautiful. Just for those who are interested, with shipping and everything, it only came out to $42. That's a good price for that. But again, it's available in paperback, and it's an important part of Woodhaven's history. Shortly after he died, there were horse races all around the country that were named in his honors, especially here in New York, and also in New Jersey, which is where he was born. Again, there's mentions of like the Woodruff series, the Woodruff Stakes, all through the peppered throughout the 20th century. But I mean, even as late here, you see 77, 1979, the Hiram Woodruff Free for All series at the Meadowlands. This here, I believe, yeah, that's 1991. The Hiram Woodruff at the Meadowlands, the trot. This here is 2009. The Hiram Woodruff kicks off the big Meadowlands weekend. You know, again, the name has stuck around a very, very long time. There's right up there at the top, the Hiram Woodruff. This is last year, May 2022 at the Meadowlands. So his name has continued to be well known in certain circles, and when you read about his life, his you know, his fame, his accomplishments, when you see how well regarded he was liked and everything, it just kind of sad that he's not better remembered here in Woodhaven. And maybe by telling his story, or maybe doing something more, maybe getting a street sign or something someday, we can make sure people know his name and his story a bit better. Here's just an interesting anecdote about him too. Is this is from a 1939 Brooklyn Eagle article. So this is 1939. So this is what, some 70 something years after Hiram Woodruff passed away, and this guy's talking about his memories of you know, again, you know, you had an old timer in 1939 who was young enough to see Snedeker's Hotel and some of the other things there, and knew some of the people. And what caught my eye with this was the last bit over here on the right, where it said the glories of Union Course Racetrack are immortalized by Oliver Wendell Holmes, no relation, in his poem entitled "How the Old Horse Won the Bet." And it's a poem written by Oliver Wendell Holmes. His son was on the Supreme Court, so that's why you probably know the name. But his father, the Supreme Court justice, his father was a famous poet, and he wrote this poem about the Union Course. And there, about 1, 2, 3, 4, about the 5th line down, it says, "The swift GM, old Hiram's nag, the fleet SH, Dan Pfeiffer's brag," and then it goes on. But Hiram Woodruff gets a call out in this poem about all the great horses and trainers. If you look up that poem, "How the Old Horse Won the Bet," you can find it online. I got to tell you though, it's long. It is long. So and I don't know, sometimes even read the newspapers, the people spoke differently in those days. And you know, just like they would have a hard time understanding some of the conversations we have, sometimes it's a little difficult to understand exactly what they're getting at sometimes. But definitely an interesting read. And then, you know, just a final look back at Hiram Woodruff's grave site here. And this is from behind the grave site, you know, where he's buried. If you look over to the left, you can see Franklin K. Lane, and right over here would have been his land. You know, the Franklin K. Lane wasn't there at the time. So where his tombstone was really was within eyesight of Dexter Park and his land there. So, you know, he really never left the neighborhood, you know, and that's why in some ways I say he's the most famous Woodhaven resident ever. If I'm sure others you would definitely say are more famous: Mae West, Adrian Brody, Brian Hyland. Who am I leaving anyone out? I mean, you know, they were more famous, I guess, but I don't know if anyone, I don't know if they were as well respected in their craft as this guy was. And he was truly a resident of this community to the end, even being buried within sight of his the place he loved most in our community. So that's and that's it right over there from his vantage view. So what about Dexter? Let's go back to Dexter and find out what happened to him. The guy here, Bud Doble, and Bud Doble's an interesting character in this. We don't talk about him much tonight, but he was a jockey, a rider that worked and was very close friends with Hiram Woodruff. And after Woodruff passed away, the next owner, this Mr. George Trussell, he kept Bud Doble on as a rider, and that's when they ran a new world record. You can see up in the judges booth up there, it says 2 minutes 17 seconds and a quarter. And a lot of these commemorative drawings there, but Bud Doble is interesting because if you read a lot of the old newspapers about racing, because he lived to be a very old man, so later in his life, he gave a lot of interviews and talked about the old days and talked about Hiram Woodruff, and it was really again, it was, you know, a lot of these articles just are a godsend because they just give us so much information. At this point in Dexter's life, after he set that record, this is where this gentleman steps in, Robert Bonner. He was Irish and came to the U.S. when he was 15 years old. He was apprenticed in the printing trade and went on to become a newspaper writer, a columnist, and eventually founded his own newspaper, the New York Ledger, which was a powerful periodical for a time. He was very, very rich. And you can see there, he bought Dexter for $35,000, which calculates to over $650,000 today. And this is a horse that had just set a record. And he immediately retired Dexter and just used him as his own like horse. But he was also very, very much involved in politics, Mr. Bonner, and he supported Ulysses S. Grant in the 1868 presidential election, and this was a very important election in our history. It was the first one after the Civil War, and it was the first one after the Lincoln assassination, and it was looking like it was a pretty close race. And Mr. Bonner would go out on rides through different cities. They would take Dexter on a tour and follow around with Ulysses S. Grant, and he would make his appearances in different cities, riding Dexter, and you know, that would bring out the crowds. The crowds would love to see Dexter, and there were lots of these kinds of drawings and paintings of Mr. Grant and Bonner on Dexter. And by this time, you can see Dexter had, I guess they're saying his best time was now down to 2:16. When you look at the record now, the record is I forget what it is, but it's a lot lower than 2:16 now these days. Here's another drawing of Dexter carrying Mr. Grant. And again, he would ride him around with Mr. Bonner or by himself. And he won the election that year, became President Grant over Horatio Seymour. You see that he beat him by about what is that, 5 points or so. The town of Dexter, Iowa, took their name from the horse Dexter. I like how this is from their website. I like how they call themselves the original one horse town. That's nice. And they are named after this horse. They're also famous for in the 1930s, one of the shootouts that Bonnie and Clyde had took part in Dexter, Iowa. That's their one of their other claims to fame. And they Dexter inspired a wave of weather vanes. You know, a lot of people had weather vanes in those days, but what were they, like roosters or different things? Well, he inspired a line of weather vanes that were horses, and the line of weather vanes became known as Dexter weather vanes. In fact, if you Google Dexter weather vanes, that's what you'll see. You'll see weather vanes that are horses. There you go. So this is where it gets a little shaky. Question is, was Dexter Park named after Dexter the horse? So this is from a little book, and these two folks have written a couple of really good articles about Dexter Park, and they wrote a booklet that was published by the Historical Society on the history of Dexter Park. And they say one story relates that Dexter was buried at Dexter Park. One of the legends of Dexter Park is that a large incline in right field, referred to as Horse Heaven, was the result of some equine internment. And then it says, according to a 1934 newspaper article, some years ago, workmen in Dexter Park dug up the jawbone of a horse and presented it to Charlie Powell of the Queen's Topographical Bureau. If today you go to the Topographical Bureau, you can view a jawbone fragment and some teeth that are labeled teeth of the famous horse Dexter of Woodhaven. So now they got that gift in I guess 1930s or whatever they got it, but I sent them an email. I sent them an email and asked them if they had a jar with some teeth, and I haven't heard back from them. I haven't heard back from them at all. But Doug and Jane Jacobs wrote that, and that's something I've seen mentioned in another a number of other articles around there, that Dexter was buried there, and that's where it got its name. So let's take a look at that. Here's an article from 1882. So now this is about 15 years or so after Hiram Woodruff passed away. And starting in the third line over here on the right, it says, Hiram Woodruff died many years ago, and his place, which was afterwards kept by his nephew, Hiram Woodruff Howe, and which adjoins John L., that's Snedeker's, is now kept by Uncle Dexter, who is one of the jolliest of hosts, and who has named the place Dexter Park and made it a headquarters for the shootists of our day. So, so now comes this character, Uncle Dexter. Now, along the way, there are some articles that mention the manager of the place as being a man named Charles Dexter. And I've seen another article which says that Charles Dexter named the place after himself. I'm thinking that Charles Dexter and Uncle Dexter got to be the same person. And it says here that Uncle Dexter named the place Dexter Park, but it doesn't make it clear if it named it after himself or if he named it after the horse. Did he take his name after the horse? Again, you know, there's nothing sure here. But something interesting it says here is, on the grounds of Woodruff's old home lie the remains of Lady Emma, a famous trotter whose grave is marked by a rose bush. So right away we see there was a horse buried there, but Lady Emma. And then it says on the site, this is interesting for you folks maybe that live where the Union Course racetrack was. On the site of the Union Course are buried some great trotters of Woodhaven's time, among them Lady Sutton, Lady Moscow, Young Dutchman, George Patchen, Lady Blanche, and Gray Messenger. So, you know, I think we all kind of understand that being the land that we inhabit now used to be farmland and racetrack, and you know, horses used to be a big part of this this community. I think we all understand that we're probably got a lot of, we might have a few horses in our backyards. If you dug down deep enough, it wouldn't surprise us. You know, a few years ago, when they were doing the design of the fences of the bus stops on Woodhaven Boulevard, there was an artist who approached us and asked us some questions about what we thought the symbol of Woodhaven should be. They asked different people in the community, and our answer was the horse, because we were a farmland, and we did have a good solid horse racing history, even though it's much deeper and much better than I even expected at the time. But we also have all the horses as part of the Forest Park Carousel, which is a big part of our history. So we nominated the horse, and that's why if you go down Woodhaven Boulevard and look at the metal fences that are next to the bus stops, you'll see horses on them, and that's due to our connection to horses. Dexter eventually says here yields to old age. 1888. You know, he outlived Woodruff by 21 years, and it says here Dexter was 30 years old this month, and for a year past he had not been in harness, but had taken his ease in the stable of Mr. Bonner, still owned by Mr. Bonner, who regarded nothing as too good for him. Nothing as too good for him. That's nice. Mr. Bonner sent the body to Tarrytown yesterday to be buried on a choice spot on his farm there. So right there, any idea of Dexter being buried in Dexter Field is blown out of the water. It's just not feasible. The only connection the horse Dexter had to that land was Hiram Woodruff, and he'd been gone for 21 years. And I guess it would depend on, you know, if Mr. Bonner was very, very sentimental or not. It seems here he seems to be pretty sentimental. He's sending it to a choice spot on his farm. He's sending Dexter, right? And then he says he was too good a horse to send to the boneyard. So, so I had him put on a truck, covered up, and taken up to my farm. So, okay. And then,
it was nice. He was well taken care of.
And then when asked whether he should erect a monument to Dexter, Mr. Bonner said that he drew the line at tombstones so far as horses were concerned. So no tombstone for Dexter, which is a shame, because had he erected something, maybe there would be some marker to this day where Dexter is. I've done some searching online for Mr. Bonner's farm or any kind of racehorsing farm up there in Tarrytown, and I've drawn a blank so far. Doesn't mean I'm giving up, but I've drawn a blank so far. If anyone here knows anyone in Tarrytown who knows Tarrytown history, maybe they may know something. Yeah, again, there's the on the grounds of Woodruff's old home. Remember, they you know, there's a lot of evidence there now that says it's not Dexter that's buried there. Dexter himself, the racehorse, was also elected into the harness racing museum, also in 1956, and if you visit the Harness Racing Museum Hall of Fame, they have a whole case dedicated to Dexter. You know, I had read that Dexter was a famous racehorse. I had read, that Dexter was popular. I really did not understand the extent to how well he was regarded, to the point where you have a case dedicated to him, a whole case dedicated to Dexter. If you go into the gift shop, I spotted this, Dexter with jockey. I didn't get it for a couple of reasons. One, it was a set of 4 for $30. Only one was Dexter. So I was gonna, basically pay $30 for one mug. But also, looking at the picture of Dexter, he didn't have the white feet, and so it just seemed kind of like a generic drawing of a horse. But still, it was interesting that they were selling a coffee mug with Dexter's name on it. So that finishes really that period of time in Dexter Park,
Oh.
and of these two famous people. And we're just going to move really quickly into this last section. It's kind of a segue. It's basically what happened after the race course closed. The race course, Union course, closed in 1870 was the last race. And then the land sat there for many years. It was owned by a horse race guy named Shaw, and he had his own place as well, a big place that people used to gather at. And when he passed away, he owned the land at that time that Union course was on, and it fell into the possession of his 2 sons. And his 2 sons did nothing with the land. They let it sit there. All the fencing and everything that was around it, all of the stables inside, all of the spectator stands, the judges' tower, everything that was in there over the course of a number of years was torn to pieces by the residents of Woodhaven, especially in the wintertime, when all of a sudden they needed wood to burn. They would just go over there and just start taking it. And eventually it was just this big, empty field. They had problems from time to time of people who were just traveling, who just slept out in the field. Sometimes they slept there for long periods of time, and people in the community would chase them out. But eventually, the sons sold the land. They were smart to hold on to the land. It was their plan all along, because they foresaw a day where that land would become valuable, and indeed it did. And it was cut up, and it was turned into housing. But from that 1870 through through the 1900 or so, there wasn't much or any horse activity left to be done at Hiram Woodruff Stables and Roadhouse. So they had to find a new purpose for it. And that's where this Charles Dexter, or Uncle Dexter, and some other men come into this next section, which I call the curse over Woodhaven. And there we go. The same article we were looking there a little while ago. Hiram Woodruff died many years ago, and his place is now kept by Uncle Dexter, who is one of the jolliest hosts and who has named the place Dexter Park and made it a headquarters for the pigeon shootists of our day. So now, over the next couple of decades, Dexter Park, it turns into a home for pigeon shooting, and this became big business. There was a lot of money that would change hands, and people would come out and they would shoot at pigeons. And you can see in this article here, they talk about it. This is 1873, so this is just a few years after Hiram Woodruff's death. But he says, on Saturday, the first of 2 matches will be shot at Dexter's, Hiram Woodruff's old hotel, just beyond East New York. So there comes a period of time where you see the place called Dexter's, and it always refers to it as Hiram Woodruff's old place. Good scores there made at Dexter Park. More pigeon shooting, and here's a mention. It's going to be given by Charles E. Dexter, who we can assume or imagine is the jolly Uncle Dexter. And these articles, talk about the pigeon shooting that goes on there, and the great scores these people make and everything. But all the while, the thing you have to remember is that they're constantly bringing in pigeons, hundreds a week, and they're killing them right right there on the pitch. And it says here, this is someone who is complaining about this in the paper, complaining that the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals have not gotten involved in this. And they talked about, Dexter Park, where pigeon shooting matches are being held 2 to 5 times almost every week, all year round. And the people who live nearby, they say what happens is a lot of times these pigeons are kept in these cages in very cramped conditions, and then they are released and don't really stand much of a chance to escape or anything. Some that do get away, perhaps wounded, and were landing on the houses around Dexter Park. A lot of them over on like 76th Street, in the backyards and on the houses. And you see down here, it says, we have picked up in our garden hundreds of those poor, wounded, crippled birds to kill them and end their misery. And we have taken off hundreds of bodies of dead pigeons from our roofs where they managed to fly, only to die there of starvation as a result of their wounds. This was a real violent violent sport, and it was people in the community really spoke up against it and fought against it, and finally in 1901 a law was proposed to make shooting live pigeons illegal. And here you have some of the prominent Brooklyn trap shots arguing that shooting live pigeons is not a cruel sport. But eventually they would lose that article. They would lose that argument the next year when it was outlawed. But over those 30 so years, tens and tens of thousands of pigeons were brought to that spot, where such a kind man lived, who was so beloved, and all these pigeons were brought there, and they were cruelly slaughtered. So it has always been kind of my contention that Woodhaven has been under a curse ever since, and that the curse of the pigeons, because they've been making a mess at Jamaica Avenue ever since the last 100 years, and they're getting their revenge on us. But that's that brought us to the 20th century, and we'll be discussing this next month. We'll talk about Dexter Park with baseball and Max Rosner, and during the time that they were shooting pigeons there, they began playing baseball in Dexter Park. There wasn't a stadium or really stands as such. This is not a drawing of Dexter Park, by the way, but this is a drawing of old-time baseball as it was played in Dexter Park, just on a field. And people could stand around in the outfield and on the sides and watch. And this is the way baseball was done in the beginning. And they began playing baseball while they were still doing pigeon shooting there, because there was a lot of room there. In the late 1800s, they were, and it's funny how they used to just advertise in the paper saying, hey, this team is having a a game, come on out, come on out. And they would call out for ball players to come and play. It was very, very unorganized in these days, and very much in development. And Dexter Park was a part of it there. You can see both these articles here. That bottom one, the Brooklyn Elevated Baseball Club has arranged games with the following clubs and will open their new grounds, Dexter Park, with the Merits of Brooklyn on Sunday, April 14th. So, you have the early glimmers of baseball peeking through. And in 1902, when they come in, the city comes in and the state and says, hey, you can no longer use this for pigeon shooting. It's at that time that baseball takes over those grounds, and Woodhaven enters the next phase of its history with closing the chapter on horse racing and opening it up to baseball. So that's our presentation on the Kings of the Turf, Hiram Woodruff and Dexter, and again, next month, Dexter Park, the Bushwicks. So, we're talking about the same piece of land there with a very, very interesting history of baseball, and Mr. Max Rosner. And we had a really nice day on July 1st when the family of Max Rosner came back, and we did a street co-naming in his honor. And it's really funny how you had someone in Max Rosner who everyone talks about as being one of the most beloved people in Woodhaven, how everyone loved him and how he was kind, and yet there on the other side of that land's history at the beginning, you had another very good, kind man in Hiram Woodruff. And it's just really interesting to me how now we have a fuller picture of that place. So don't forget, night of the races at Near's Tavern, Monday, August 21st, 7 p.m. And it's going to be a lot of fun that night with Rocky Hannon, telling about his life. He told me a story over the phone. I won't repeat it here because he tells it much better to me, but how he got into horse racing. And it's a pretty funny story. It's really, the kind of scene you can picture in a movie. So that's our presentation for
Thank
this
you,
evening.
Ed.
Thanks. That was very
you.
interesting.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks.
There's
Thank you. It's
absolutely nothing
wonderful.
there's nothing in Woodhaven with his name on it anywhere.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Uh,
It's
yeah.
really amazing,
Yeah, that's
given the whole history. Yeah.
that's something we look to change at some point in the future.
Yeah, especially since he was known around the country.
Yeah.
It wasn't just local, but all around.
Yeah.
We have such a really nice history of horse racing in this community. And a lot of attention has been paid to the Union course, and deservedly so. But it was just nice to find that there was a real rich history outside of the Union course that we could really dig through and learn.
Okay. Thank you. It's a good presentation.
Well, look
As
forward
usual.
for the next part.
All right. Well, let me ask you guys. So before we go, what do you think? You think he should be bumped up on the list of famous people from Woodhaven?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, one other famous person in the cemetery, isn't Houdini buried there?
Houdini is buried there.
Yeah, I thought so.
And,
One more person that I could think of.
Yeah, there's like I said, that list had 60 notable people on there.
Houdini's
And
elsewhere.
if it's looking, all over that cemetery, it'd be tough to visit them all in one day, but they if you look and see where they're clustered, you can certainly hit a bunch of them at one time.
Ed Houdini's elsewhere. He's in a cemetery called Machpelah. Which
Is he?
on-
Okay.
It's on Cypress Hills Street, closer to the Jackie Robinson Parkway.
Okay. I've never been to his
It's worth a
his
visit.
grave.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
We can access that. It's open to anybody.
Yeah, Houdini is on the other side of Snake Hill. That's that road that goes all the way down into Glendale. And
Okay.
there's like a big S. Used to take my bike down there and just let everything go and just go zoop all the way down. Perhaps it wasn't safe, but it was fun. Well, in fact,
They have a
um,
ceremony for Houdini. This is another story, but on the Hebrew anniversary of his death, they have magicians come in and they do a break the wand ceremony.
Mhm.
They have magicians and they have rabbis there to do a ceremony every year. I assume they still do.
Wow. Interesting.
And then you had Trotting Horse Lane. And part of that is
Yep.
just off of,
On Forest Hills, yeah.
yeah, and then Atlantic Avenue, just off, there's one little street there, just off Atlantic Avenue, Woodhaven. It's
What
still
street is that?
marked.
What street is that?
I think it's about 99th Street or so, it's the one block off of the Woodhaven Boulevard. It's called Trotting Horse Lane.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was part of the Woodhaven, Boulevard. at one time.
So
Because it
you
goes-
say it over by Atlantic?
Yeah, south of Atlantic Avenue, just over, where that old house is when you're driving south on Woodhaven, you'll see that old house that's still there on the corner. It's just
Uh-huh.
right that street there.
Okay, hold on. Let's take a quick look here, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Because it went right down where the oh, we missed it. Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's see now. Let's get to
Like right
Atlantic Avenue.
Yeah, south off Woodhaven. Yeah, because it continued up to
There is a
where-
stop, right? When we drove that way on Van
Yeah.
Cooper.
I think this is where the house is you're talking about,
right,
right?
yeah, and that's
Different
right, yeah. We're at 95th Avenue, around that area there. There's some old houses in that area. That's where actually, that's not far from where the church was that when they, this area right here, I think, yeah.
Now,
Right
this
off the-
house here,
Right, that old
This-
house is down there. That sign there maybe even says.
I have an article about this house.
What is the
And,
place?
and I have misplaced it. I know I'll find it again. But it's from a
Yeah.
it's from an article in the 1880s. And the man who lived there at the time was an abolitionist, and he had a collection of slavery items in there, posters and sheets and all sorts of things, paintings, everything. And he used to hold meetings in there to talk about slavery in that house. It's a very interesting looking house. Like I said, I want to find out. I want to get that article and get it out. I'll find it.
It's a home for special needs patients
Is it?
today.
Is that what it is? Oh,
And there was a couple of old churches down there too, I think on 95th Avenue. And one of them, the money was given to build that church from Cross Jeans, the
Yeah.
owner. He used to walk
Right.
across the street there and go to church.
I think it's down this street.
Because that's a very old area, right in that area there.
Yeah, it's this one right here.
Yeah, around there.
This church here, built 1890, when Grosjean's son Alfred, when he died in Florida in a hunting / boating accident.
Yeah.
He built this house for his he built this church for his French workers.
Right, yeah.
And he used to go there. They said he never really recovered from the death of his son, but he used to go there and pray every day.
Yeah.
So,
And part of that Trotting House Lane, that's up by the Myrtle Avenue there.
Right,
Metropolitan
right.
Avenue. Yeah,
Metropolitan Avenue.
yeah, right.
well,
Ed, I have a question back to Dexter for just a moment. Did he ever run at Saratoga? Does he have a history up there?
No, not that I'm aware of. No,
Hmm.
not that I'm aware of. But I haven't read the book yet. So
Okay.
we'll see what pops up. But I don't believe so. I haven't seen him running that far north, even though he did run in Philadelphia, so it's possible. All right, well, listen, thank
Okay.
you all.
Thank
It was good seeing everybody.
Great presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
Fun as usual. Nice
Very good.
job, Ed. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you guys soon. Be well. Take care, everyone.
Thank
You
thank you,
Thank
everybody
you.
that's coming.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
See you on the 21st, Ed.
All right. Thank you, Angela.
Great job.
Thank you, Ed. Everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night, all.
Okay.